Domekeeper takes several common game mechanisms to form something that feels fresh and familiar in equal measure. Nothing about it is particularly innovative. It's simply a roguelite where you mine resources and defend your dome from waves of attacking creatures. But it's how Domekeeper executes those mechanisms that give it a unique flavor. It's a tower defense game with no towers. Instead, you utilize the built-in weapons of your dome to defend it manually. In between waves, you dig beneath the surface to uncover resources that can be spent on various upgrades. Yet, no hazards or monsters are lurking in the underground. The enemy is instead time itself, and the challenge is your own efficiency. At the same time, there's no true countdown either. The game ends when you end it, or succumb to the attacking monsters. To top it off, it's also a roguelite, but one where a given run may take several hours depending on your choice of map and difficulty. It manages to feel both cozy and frantic. You're completely safe as you mine, yet the time until the next wave is constantly ticking away. Your precious dome is defenseless until you make it topside. Once there, defending the dome is less about twitch reflexes and more about prioritizing targets and abilities alongside the prep work you've done with your choice of upgrades. Different upgrades work better for different types of enemies. Mistakes will be felt over time, and can impact your mining strategy. Domekeeper is a pretty compact experience with a lot of charm. Its gameplay is as equally minimalistic as the visuals, yet each knob and dial has a purpose that fits within the framework of what the game is attempting to do. The main mode of Domekeeper has you hunting a relic buried deep underground, and finding it is the only way to win. Meanwhile, hordes of shadow monsters throw themselves at you in waves, leaving you just enough breathing room to dig deeper in your search. The catch is, without you, your dome is defenseless. You have to use your free time carefully and be sure to return in time to defend it. The relic isn't the only thing that can be found beneath the surface. Iron, cobalt, and water can all be carried back to your dome to purchase upgrades. You may even find an artifact, such as the preciously adorable Drillbert that can help you mine, or an elevator that can help you ferry resources back to your dome. Your starting dome has a laser weapon, but you can also unlock a dome that uses a sword, and the playstyles between both differ greatly. They both offer separate and unique upgrade paths, and other aspects can also be unlocked. For example, you start with a shield, but you can also unlock monster repellent or an orchard that grows fruit that can buff you while also using vines to impede the monsters. You have to strike a balance between upgrading your dome, gadgets, and yourself. A more powerful weapon is needed for stronger hordes, but without a stronger drill, mining will take forever. Without increased carry weight, it can take too many trips to bring home the goods. I was delighted to find that every artifact, such as Drillbert, also has its own upgrade tree, and each one has a pretty big impact on the game. The core of Domekeeper is a matter of balancing priorities, both when mining and in combat. It's nearly impossible to stop the entire horde from reaching your dome, so it pays to know which ones to prioritize first. For example, the laser dome can be upgraded so that melee attacks deal significantly less damage. That leaves you some wiggle room to take out the pesky flyers and ranged attackers first. If you also happen to have the electrostatic upgrade, that's doubly true. At the same time, if you have a sword dome and a reflector shield, it might make more sense to handle the monsters in your face first. Several different environments can be unlocked, and they all differ slightly when it comes to enemy types, so different configurations can fare better or worse. To some degree, the initial challenge is simply piecing together your priorities for each one. I found the visuals in Domekeeper to actually be quite striking. The shadow monsters have very fluid animations. They remind me of a game that used to scare the pants off me as a kid called Heart of Darkness, a game that probably shouldn't have been rated E for everyone. The shadow creatures in Domekeeper invoke that same type of disturbing fluidity that gives off an incredibly eerie, otherworldly vibe, one that feels familiar and alien at the same time. The cracking glass of the dome, the zap of the laser, and the pop of exploding enemies look and feel equally as strong. And it just goes to show that 2D pixel art games can look and feel as great as any other game, just in different ways. Every upgrade in Dome Keeper feels impactful, with the effects being very apparent, from faster drilling, higher carry weight, or a small laser that helps stun enemies. Each purchase feels significant, and that's great. There are also quite a few gadgets and other neat things that can be unlocked by completing runs, and the game features multiple difficulty settings, which is always a plus. I quite like how the game twisted the expectations that I would typically have for this type of game. The combat is simple but methodical. It looks fast-paced, but it really isn't. Sure, you can't be a slowpoke, but it really matters more about how you use your defenses than aiming fast. Mining the underground is also strangely peaceful, bordering on meditative, as you're completely safe while you dig. But the tension always hangs in the background, as you have to be able to make it back to your dome in time to defend it, and the deeper you dig, the more difficult that becomes. While Dome Keeper is a very tight-knit and cohesive game, its compact nature sometimes works against it. The way the upgrades are structured can unintentionally take away your agency. For example, your first 3 upgrades are almost always going to be to upgrade your drill, jetpack, and carrying capacity, because you're not going to get very far without them. It's also hard to argue against upgrading your dome's health early on. Beyond that, rather than extend your choice, the artifacts feel like they do the opposite. If I find Drillbert, I know I don't need to upgrade my drills much. If I find the elevator, I don't need to upgrade my carrying capacity as much. And if I find the teleporter, the same rings true for jetpack speed. There definitely feels like there are optimal paths based on what you find. Not only that, but even choosing between the 2 domes somewhat sets you on a straightforward path. The laser dome features the melee reduction upgrade. For example, simply choosing that dome means you're probably going to follow a path that focuses less on melee attackers, and there are only 2 domes to choose from. By that same token, there are also 2 characters to choose from. However, one was listed as coming soon. That's a bit of a bummer, and not the type of thing you want to see in a game outside of early access. No matter what difficulty you play, your victory is mostly decided by how efficiently you mine and return resources. The thing is, the most efficient way to mine is fairly simple to figure out. Once you do, every run is spent systematically excavating in that way, while adapting your upgrades based on what you find. Once that happens, Dome Keeper can feel somewhat one-note, and its replay value falls off quicker than with most roguelite games. That said, there is a prestige mode that alleviates it somewhat. Instead of searching out a relic, you have to balance using resources and sending them back home. It's interesting, but the core gameplay is the same, so it can still fall victim to the same repetition. Dome Keeper is an enjoyable game with an intriguing duality that feels equally cozy and chaotic. The repetition sets in faster than I would like. However, the fact that new domes, gadgets, and modes are unlocked one at a time after each run means there is a steady drip feed of new toys to try over time. Its compact nature makes for a graceful game that isn't bloated, but it also steps on its own toes. The number of upgrades and even how you mine out resources feels like an illusion of choice, as the optimal way to play becomes obvious fairly quickly. Up until that point, and even for a while afterward, it's fun to play. It just doesn't stand its ground for nearly as long as other roguelite games, and replayability is an important defining feature of the genre. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, consider liking and subscribing. It helps me out a great deal. I've also left several links in the description below, including to my website, where you can find the bulk of my written content, but also to my Twitter, Patreon, Discord, and more. In any case, thanks for watching, and until next time.